Welcome to Zoe Stories. How Femboys Help Break Gender Stereotypes. I didn't plan for anyone to see me like this. Not today, not ever. But there I was, standing in front of my mirror at 6 in the morning, staring at a reflection that felt like a confession I hadn't spoken yet. My hair. I don't even know when it started falling naturally over my eyes like that. My lips, slightly glossed because I forgot to wipe it off last night. My jawline softer than it used to be, not changed by magic or hormones just because I'd stopped clenching it around people. And the real shock wasn't my appearance. It was the feeling. That terrifying, electric moment when you realize, this might actually be who I am. My fingers trembled as I touched the hem of the pastel pink shirt I'd slept in, oversized, soft, stolen from the women's section because I lost a bet and then never returned it. I should have felt stupid, weak, embarrassed, but I didn't. I felt, God, I don't even know how to explain it, like I was breathing fully for the first time in years. Still, the panic crawled up my spine, because people like me aren't allowed to feel this way. Boys aren't supposed to like soft things, gentle fabrics, delicate silhouettes. We're supposed to be sharp edges and loud voices and straight shoulders. But last night, when I'd sat on my bed wearing this same soft shirt, I felt none of that. I felt beautiful. And that scared me more than anything. My phone buzzed suddenly, my alarm, snapping me back to reality. Work in 2 hours. Office full of people ready to judge. Ready to stare. Ready to label. I splashed water on my face, breathing quickly, trying to shake off the panic. But then I looked at the mirror again. And something in me whispered, "Why are you so scared of being soft?" The question punched me right in the chest. Because I didn't know. I didn't know why looking gentle made me feel wrong. I didn't know why dressing pretty made me feel guilty. I didn't know why wanting to express myself made me feel like a criminal. Maybe because the world taught me to fear this version of myself. But standing there, half boy, half something else, I realized the truth twisting in my stomach. I don't hate who I am becoming. I hate that I'm scared of it. That was the moment everything started. The moment I realized that being a femboy wasn't about makeup or clothes or trends. It was about breaking the rules written for me before I was even born. And I had no idea how much my life was about to change. I don't know how to explain this without sounding dramatic, but the truth is, that morning didn't feel like it belonged to me. It felt borrowed. Like I had stepped into a version of myself someone else had written overnight. The first clue was the silence. Not the normal, peaceful silence of early morning. No. This silence had weight. Like the air was holding its breath, waiting for me to wake up, so it could reveal something I wasn't supposed to see yet. I dragged myself out of bed, half-conscious, stumbling toward the bathroom with the kind of laziness only a Monday morning can give you. My bare feet touched the cold tiles, and that's when I felt something off. My skin felt different. Not rough. Not tired. Not male in the way I had been trained to feel. Just delicate. I frowned, rubbing my arm, expecting maybe dry skin or irritation. Instead, my fingers glided smoothly, almost too smoothly. A strange chill slipped up my spine. I didn't break into panic immediately, mostly because I wasn't awake enough for existential crises yet. Still rubbing sleep from my eyes, I stepped in front of the mirror and flicked on the harsh white bathroom light. And suddenly, the world froze. I didn't gasp. I didn't scream. I didn't even move. I just stared. Because the reflection staring back at me wasn't the version of myself I had fallen asleep with. My jawline looked softer, like it had been smoothed gently during the night. My cheekbones looked more defined, sharper, almost elegant. My lips looked naturally tinted, the kind of subtle blush I could never achieve even if I tried makeup filters online. But the real shock wasn't the face. It was the expression. My reflection looked calm, soft in a way I had never allowed myself to be. Almost ethereal. Almost like the kind of beauty people say isn't for boys. I blinked hard, splashing water over my face, fully expecting everything to go back to normal. But when I raised my head again, nothing changed. If anything, the reflection looked more like someone I didn't know how to explain. My heart thudded in my chest, slow, heavy, confused. But confusion wasn't the strangest part. What scared me wasn't that I looked different. What scared me was that I didn't hate it. There was a softness in my features I had secretly admired in other people, but never imagined for myself. There was a femininity in my expression that felt accidentally honest. And there I stood, a boy raised with strict rules, harsh lines, and unspoken expectations, feeling an emotion I never thought would apply to me. I look pretty. The word echoed through my mind so loudly that I gripped the sink to stay upright.
Pretty.
Not handsome. Not clean. Not polished.
Pretty.
My breath hitched. I wasn't supposed to want that. Boys don't grow up being told they can be gentle. Boys don't grow up thinking softness is allowed. Boys don't grow up believing beauty can belong to them without shame attached. But as I leaned closer to the mirror, tracing the faint curve of my cheek, I realized something deeply unsettling. I didn't feel wrong. I felt seen. And that terrified me. Because if this softness felt right, if this reflection felt like home, what did that make me? A thought flickered, dangerous and thrilling. What if this is who I've been underneath everything? I stepped back, breathing unevenly, gripping the sink so tightly my knuckles whitened. This wasn't just about how I looked. It was about everything I'd avoided feeling for years. Little signs rushed back in flashes. How I always lingered in the unisex clothing section. How I envied boys with softer faces. How I secretly saved pictures of androgynous styles, but deleted them quickly out of fear. How I loved the elegance in femboy aesthetics, online, but forced myself to laugh it off. All of it hit me like a storm. Maybe this wasn't new. Maybe this wasn't sudden. Maybe this was me finally slipping through the cracks of who I pretended to be. My phone buzzed violently, shattering the moment. My morning alarm. Reality slammed in.
Work. Colleagues.
Expectations. Masculinity. I was supposed to perform like a script. I looked at the mirror one last time. The softness didn't disappear. The gentleness didn't fade. The feminine edge didn't turn off like a glitch. It stayed, calm, quiet, patient. Like it had been waiting for me to notice. I can't go out like this, I whispered. But another voice inside me, small, trembling, honest, said, "Then who exactly are you trying to hide from?" For the first time, I didn't have an answer. I got dressed for work like a machine, mechanical, detached, almost numb. But even as I pulled on my usual clothes, something felt misaligned, like they didn't belong to the person I'd seen in the mirror an hour ago. My shirt collar felt too stiff, the jeans felt too heavy, the whole outfit felt like a costume I suddenly didn't recognize. I kept telling myself, just get through the day. Be normal. Act normal. But the problem was, I no longer knew what normal meant. And the world noticed before I even opened my mouth. The moment I pushed the glass door open, the receptionist, Aisha, froze mid-sentence. She always greeted people with robotic politeness, but today, she stared at me like I'd come in wearing neon wings. Morning," she said, blinking rapidly. I frowned. "You okay?" Yeah, just," she tilted her head. "Did you do something?" My chest tightened.
No.
"Not here. Please, not here." "No," I said too quickly. "Just tired." But the way her eyes kept drifting to my face, like she was trying to figure out a puzzle but didn't have all the pieces, it made my heart pound. I rushed past her before she could ask anything else. The office was a battlefield of rolling chairs, keyboard clacks, and badly timed jokes. But today, it felt like a shark tank. Every glance felt sharper. Every whisper felt suspicious. Every chuckle felt like it was about me. I walked to my desk, keeping my eyes down, pretending not to feel the looks. But I felt them. Especially from Ray, the guy who treated masculinity like a weapon. The self-appointed alpha. The kind of man who believed softness was weakness and repeated that belief loudly whenever anyone dared to be different. Ray stopped typing when I passed his desk. His eyes flicked up, then narrowed, then lingered. "Something different about you," he said. "Not friendly. Not curious. Just invasive." Panic spiked. "It's early. That's all." He snorted. "You look softer." It felt like someone stabbed my stomach with ice. Before I could respond, my friend Mira swooped in like a shield. "Leave him alone," she snapped. Ray raised his hands, mocking innocence.
Just saying.
No need to react. But he kept staring even after I sat down. And Mira kept watching him, jaw clenched. It didn't stop there. During our morning meeting, our manager kept looking at me like he was trying to solve a math equation. People who never noticed me before suddenly had opinions about my face, my voice, my vibe, even though I hadn't changed a damn thing intentionally. Or maybe I had, without knowing. Every reaction made me more aware of the reflection I saw that morning. More aware of the soft edge in my voice. More aware of the gentleness in my movements I could no longer hide. I felt like my body was betraying me, or maybe it was finally telling the truth. Either way, everyone saw it before I could pretend it wasn't happening. I usually sat with Mira and 2 other colleagues, but today I felt like sitting in the center of the cafeteria would be like placing myself under a spotlight. So I grabbed my lunch and tried to find a quiet corner. Didn't work, because before I could sit down, a girl from HR named Sanal walked over, staring at me with wide eyes. "Oh my God," she whispered, almost excited. "You look different." My shoulders stiffened. Good different or bad different? She bit her lip. Honestly, beautiful. I dropped my spoon. My brain shut down. She realized what she said and quickly added, I mean handsome. You look handsome. Handsome in a softer, pretty way. I stared at her, unable to find words. She laughed nervously. "Sorry, that sounded weird. I just meant your vibe is different today. Like, expressive. Free."
Free.
That word landed like thunder, because part of me felt exactly that. And part of me was terrified of feeling it. The moment Sanaa left, Mira slid into the seat across from me. She didn't smile.
She didn't tease.
She just stared.
"Talk," she said.
"What? You're hiding something. And I'm not stupid."
"What's going on?"
I opened my mouth, but the words tangled. How do you explain that you woke up looking like a version of yourself you secretly wanted to be, but never admitted? How do you tell someone you felt pretty and scared at the same time? How do you explain a feeling that doesn't have a label yet? "Mira, I don't know," I whispered. "I just feel wrong in my skin, but also right, and I can't explain it." Her expression softened instantly. She reached forward, placing her hand over mine.
"Warm. Steady. Safe."
"You don't look wrong," she said quietly. "You look like someone who finally stopped hiding." My throat tightened. "Is that bad?" I asked. "No," she said, "but it can be scary." I looked down at our hands, trying not to fall apart. "Do you think everyone else sees it?" I asked. "Yes," she answered honestly. "But that doesn't mean it's a bad thing." People kept staring the rest of the day. Some with confusion, some with curiosity, a few with admiration, and a few with judgment sharp enough to cut skin. But the hardest part wasn't them. It was me. Because every time I walked past a reflective surface, a window, a screen, a polished metal door, I caught a glimpse of that softness again. And it didn't fade. I tried deepening my voice in meetings. I tried sitting with a tougher posture. I tried forcing myself back into the version of myself I thought people expected. But nothing worked, because every attempt felt like lying, like performing, like erasing something fragile inside me that had finally woken up. By the time the workday ended, I felt drained in a way I had never experienced. Not physically, emotionally.
Pretending was exhausting.
More exhausting than any workload, any deadline, any conflict. As I walked out of the building, Mira called after me. "You okay?" "No," I said. "But I think something inside me is trying to be." She nodded slowly. "Then maybe you should let it." Her words followed me all the way home.
Soft. Simple. True.
And terrifying. Because if I let it, my life would never be the same again. The moment I shut my apartment door behind me, the silence felt different. Not peaceful. Not empty. Just expectant. Like the walls themselves knew something had changed. I dropped my bag on the floor, kicked off my shoes, and leaned against the door, sliding down until I was sitting on the cold tiles. My heart was still beating like I'd run a marathon. Not from fear anymore, but from something else. Curiosity. A sharp, strange, electric curiosity that made my fingers tremble. I pulled out my phone, stared at the dark screen, saw my faint reflection in it, the softness I'd tried to hide all day. And with that one small reflection, I cracked. I whispered into the empty room, "What's happening to me?" The room didn't answer. So I stood up, took a deep breath, and walked straight to the one place I had avoided for months. My closet. It wasn't a messy closet. It wasn't a dramatic, forbidden wardrobe of pink dresses and glitter and sequins. It was normal. T-shirts, hoodies,
Jeans.
work shirts. And hidden behind all of that, carefully tucked into a corner, like a secret I didn't know how to name, was a small black bag. A bag I hadn't touched since the dare. The dare that changed everything. My hand hovered over it. "Don't do this," I whispered to myself. But I opened it anyway. Inside were simple items. Not scandalous. Not flashy. Just soft. A pastel, oversized sweater. A pair of thin, black thigh-high socks. A silky, white cami top. A lip tint, barely used. And a choker with a tiny silver heart that Mira had jokingly put on me during the dare night. I stared at all of it, my breath catching in my throat. These weren't just clothes. They were memories I'd sealed away. Feelings I'd buried. A version of myself I was afraid to meet again. My hands shook as I pulled the sweater out. It felt unreal, too gentle for my rough fingers. The kind of fabric you'd treat like a person. I pressed it against my chest, my heartbeat sinking with its softness. And that's when the thought hit me. Do I want to feel like this again? I walked to the mirror slowly, like I was approaching a wild animal. My heartbeat echoed in the quiet room. My palms were sweaty. My breath was uneven. I lifted the oversized sweater and pulled it over my head. It slid down my body like it belonged there. I froze. My reflection wasn't a joke, wasn't a dare, wasn't an accident. It looked like someone I recognized, someone I missed without knowing. I took a step closer. The person in the mirror had softer lines, a gentler expression, a shy tilt in the neck I didn't realize I was doing. I whispered, "Why does this feel so good?" My reflection didn't answer. It just looked relieved. I slipped on the thigh-high socks next. They hugged my legs tightly, tracing warmth up my skin. My breath hitched at how strangely intimate it felt. How right it felt. I sat on the bed and stared at my legs, smooth fabric stretched over them, making everything look elegant, delicate, almost unreal. My fingers brushed the top band of the socks, and I had to close my eyes. This wasn't a joke anymore. This wasn't curiosity. This was connection. To something I'd ignored for too long. I reached for the lip tint with trembling fingers. "No," I said out loud. "This is too much." But my reflection leaned forward, almost urging me. So I uncapped it, lifted it toward my lips, and paused, feeling my heartbeat in my throat. I applied a tiny stroke, just enough to give my lips a soft rosy tint. Not feminine, not masculine, just expressive. I blinked slowly. "Who are you?" I whispered. But the mirror didn't show someone unfamiliar. It showed someone unfinished. Someone blooming. Someone who could breathe for the first time. The last item in the bag, the choker with a silver heart, felt like a test. My hands shook as I lifted it. I draped it around my neck, fastened the clasp, and slowly looked up at the mirror. That was the moment my heart stopped, because that version of me looked real. Not a costume, not an illusion, not a joke, just real. A gentle, soft, expressive human being who didn't fit in the box I kept forcing myself into. I touched the tiny silver heart. It felt warm,
Alive.
like a truth humming under my skin. I stood up, my legs a little weak, and walked to the kitchen. Every movement felt different. Not awkward, not forced, just freer. The sweater brushing my thighs with every step, the socks hugging my legs, the choker reminding me of something tender. It was like my body had finally exhaled after years of holding its breath. I made tea, catching my reflection in the microwave door, and I smiled. Not a nervous smile, not a shy one, a real one, a relieved one. For the first time, I whispered a truth I never dared say. I like this. I like me like this. But right after the warmth came a cold shock of panic. What happens if someone sees? What will people think? What will this mean for my life? My job? My friendships? My future? The questions attacked me like waves, one after another. But despite the fear, despite the shame I'd been trained to feel, despite everything, I didn't take the sweater off. I didn't remove the socks. I didn't wipe the lip tin away. I didn't unfasten the choker. Because deep down, I didn't want to go back. Not tonight. Not anymore. As the clock hit midnight, I lay in bed still wearing everything. My fingers traced the fabric, the necklace, the softness of the moment itself. I felt held, in a way I had never felt before. And I realized, this wasn't experimentation. This wasn't curiosity. This was the beginning of understanding who I really was. And once that door opened, there was no going back. The next morning, I woke up with a strange, nervous excitement twisting in my stomach. The soft sweater, the thigh highs, the choker, they were still on from last night. Somehow, I hadn't slept enough to care. My reflection in the mirror confirmed it. The version of me I had avoided for so long wasn't just awake. She, or maybe I, was thriving. I traced my fingers over the choker again. The silver heart caught the light like a tiny warning. Be careful, but explore. That was exactly what I needed. I started small. A walk to the nearby convenience store, my first solo outing dressed like this. I stepped outside, heart hammering, the cool air brushing against my exposed neck. Every step made me hyper-aware. I could feel every stare, every potential judgment, but also every possibility. And then it happened. A passerby smiled. A genuine, warm smile. Nothing else, no words, no comments, just acknowledgement. My chest lifted. The tension in my shoulders released slightly. Maybe this isn't as dangerous as I imagined. The walk became a rhythm. Sidewalks, crosswalks, sunlight glinting off glass windows showing fleeting reflections. Each glimpse reminded me, this version of myself exists. And maybe the world could see her too. By evening, curiosity pushed me further. I grabbed my makeup kit, the tiny, modest set I'd hidden for months and used. I'd never dared before, but tonight the apartment was mine. I swiped a hint of mascara over my lashes. Not dramatic, not obvious, just a touch to enhance the eyes I'd begun to notice more than ever. Next, a subtle highlighter across my cheekbones. Something gentle, something soft, something that said this is me, and I don't care if the world isn't ready. I stared at the mirror, amazed. The reflection smiled back, softer and more confident than ever. It wasn't perfection. It wasn't a cosplay. It was just me, finally alive. Next came posture, gestures, and voice, the subtle language of self-expression I'd never practiced. I walked across the apartment slowly, tracing the sensation of fabric against my legs. How did she move? Graceful but natural, confident but not showy? Every small step became a meditation, every turn of the wrist a statement. And my voice, oh, that cursed, restrained voice I'd used for years, softened without even trying. Reading lines from a book aloud, I noticed a melodic rhythm I hadn't dared to hear in myself before. Each discovery sparked a thrill. I laughed quietly, realizing that every tiny experiment made the reflection in the mirror feel more alive, more mine. Of course, fear never left entirely. The phone buzzed with notifications, work emails, texts from friends, social media alerts. Every ping was a reminder that this transformation, this new persona, was fragile. A single mistake, an accidental photo, a sudden visitor, could undo everything. Still, I pressed on. I dressed carefully, choosing outfits that were comfortable yet expressive. The pastel sweater, thigh-high socks, maybe a flowy skirt. Every combination was a test. How do I feel? How does the world respond? How much of myself can I show safely? I walked to the window, peering at the street below. People passed, oblivious. But I imagined seeing me, and for a fleeting moment, I felt powerful. One night, after a particularly long day of work pretending to be the same old me, I allowed myself a full hour of immersion. I applied makeup meticulously. Soft eyeliner, a light blush, a tint for the lips. I practiced expressions in the mirror, shy smiles, playful smirks, confident gazes. I recorded myself with the phone, not to share, just to observe. I watched the reflection, soft, vulnerable, strong, expressive. And for the first time in years, I didn't see flaws. I saw potential. I saw power. After days of private practice, the urge to test the world grew unbearable. The next outing was simple, a walk to the park. The sweater, the skirt, the socks, the choker, light makeup. Nothing too obvious, nothing too loud, just me, alive and breathing outside. I felt eyes on me immediately. Some curious, some judgmental, some admiring. I caught snippets of whispers. A passerby complimented my outfit softly. Another raised an eyebrow, clearly uncomfortable. My heartbeat raced with excitement. Fear and thrill intertwined like a dangerous dance. And then I laughed quietly, a soft, triumphant sound, because I realized I could exist in this world exactly as I was. Returning home, I didn't take anything off. I looked in the mirror again. And unlike the first day, there was no shock. No fear. Just recognition. This reflection was me. This me was real. And slowly, I began to accept that I might never go back. I whispered to the mirror. I'm still me. I'm still me, just more honest than ever. By the end of the week, I had discovered something important. The world wasn't ready for me entirely, and I wasn't ready to show it fully. But hiding wasn't necessary either. I could experiment, test boundaries, blend shadows and sunlight. Every subtle act, every small smile, every flick of the wrist, every soft step was a rebellion and a revelation. I had crossed a line, and on the other side I felt alive. The next weekend, I made a decision. No more hiding. No more half measures. I would go out fully, dressed, made up, soft, expressive, and see what the world actually thought of me. Not in secret. Not in quiet corners. I needed to know. The first step was terrifying. I opened my wardrobe and chose the outfit carefully. A delicate cream blouse that draped lightly over my shoulders. A soft, high-waist skirt that swung gently with every step. The thigh-high socks I'd grown strangely attached to. And of course, the choker. The tiny silver heart gleamed, almost like a talisman reminding me to be brave. I applied makeup meticulously, soft pink blush, eyeliner, and just a hint of lip tint. Each stroke was deliberate, intimate, a secret conversation with myself. When I finished, I stepped in front of the mirror and froze. The reflection smiled back at me. Not nervous. Not ashamed. Not uncertain. She, or I, looked alive. Vibrant. Confident. And undeniably soft. Beautiful even. I swallowed hard and whispered, "All right, let's see what happens." The moment I walked out the door, the air hit me differently. Sunlight on my shoulders. A breeze teasing the hem of my skirt. Every movement, every sensation felt heightened. Like the city itself had become a stage for me. People passed by, some oblivious, some glancing, some smiling. It was intoxicating. A strange combination of fear and exhilaration. Every compliment, every nod of acknowledgement, felt like a reward. Every whisper or sideways glance felt like a challenge, and I walked taller with each step. At a cafe, I ordered a coffee. The barista looked up, took a second glance, and smiled warmly. "You have a lovely style," she said. I choked on my words. Thanks." Her smile lingered, genuine and kind. I realized something important. Someone could see me for me and not hate it, not mock, not question, just appreciate. And it sent a shiver down my spine. I had been living in fear for so long that this simple acknowledgement felt revolutionary. Later, I walked to a nearby park, the soft grass brushing against my skirt. Children played nearby, people jogged, couples held hands, but I barely noticed them. I was focused on myself, the way my steps felt, the way my reflection in shop windows glimmered like fragments of a story I was finally telling. A girl on a bench glanced up and complimented my socks, her voice warm, not teasing. I smiled nervously, whispered thanks, and kept walking. My chest expanded with a mixture of pride and disbelief. I could exist like this. I could live openly and not be punished for it. It was intoxicating. A subtle rebellion with no consequences, yet everything had changed. I paused by a coffee shop window, staring at my reflection. The girl in the glass looked confident,
Alive.
expressive. I saw soft curves, soft colors, soft gestures, but also strength. There was courage in choosing to walk through the world like this. Courage in choosing to exist fully. Courage in defying every rule I'd been taught about masculinity and appearance. And for the first time, I felt proud. Proud of the small choices, the experiments, the secret smiles. Proud of the soft voice, the gentle sway, the subtle gestures. Proud of being a femboy in a world that expected me to be anything else. Later that day, I met Mira. I was nervous. What would she think when she saw me fully dressed in public? She stared for a long moment, then smiled. "You look amazing," she said. Not joking, not teasing, just honest admiration. Her eyes sparkled. "You seem lighter, happier." I laughed softly, heart swelling. I think I am. The first real public validation from someone I trusted. It meant more than I expected. It wasn't about approval, it was about being recognized, being seen as myself, and having someone I cared about acknowledge it without judgment felt revolutionary. On the way home, I passed a group of people who whispered as I walked by. I froze, expecting ridicule. But one of them gave a small nod of approval, a subtle, supportive gesture. My breath caught. My chest felt tight. It was terrifying and empowering all at once. I realized people notice. Some judge. Some encourage. But living authentically always creates ripples. Even small ripples matter. By the time I returned home, I felt exhausted, but in a good way. My legs ached from walking. My chest ached from adrenaline. But my soul felt alive. I stood in front of the mirror one last time before removing my outfit. And I didn't feel shame. Not today. Not yet. The reflection smiled back at me. Soft, gentle, proud. The reflection whispered, "You're discovering who you are." And I knew it was true. I had crossed a line, tested the world, found courage, and learned that softness didn't mean weakness. That being a femboy wasn't a joke, a phase, or a costume. It was a rebellion, a revelation, a declaration that I could exist outside the rules. That night, I journaled everything. Every glance, every whisper, every smile. The fear, yes, but also the exhilaration. I realized I had begun to rewrite the story I'd been forced to live. Not just in private, not just in secret, but in the world itself. The quiet victories were just as powerful as the bold ones. Every step, every smile, every soft gesture was proof I could exist authentically. I drifted off to sleep, wearing the outfit still, feeling a deep, quiet pride. A pride that whispered, "This is only the beginning." It was Friday evening, and the office party was in full swing. A casual gathering, they said. Just drinks and snacks, they said. But to me, it felt like stepping into a battlefield. Every fluorescent light, every chatter, every sideways glance that felt magnified. I had spent the week experimenting in public, testing the waters, discovering courage. But tonight I couldn't retreat into private safety. This was the real world, and it was watching. I checked my reflection in the bathroom mirror before leaving my apartment. Cream blouse, flowing skirt, thigh highs. Choker. Makeup carefully applied. I studied myself. The girl in the mirror wasn't fake. Not a costume. Not a dare.
Just me.
But doubt crept in. What would my colleagues think? Would Ray mock me openly? Would someone snap a photo and share it online? Would Mira still accept me fully, or was this too much even for her? I shook my head.
No.
I couldn't hide anymore. Not tonight. Stepping into the party, I felt every pair of eyes flick toward me. Some surprised, some curious, and some sharp, judgmental. Ray's gaze found me immediately. His smirk wasn't friendly. It was predatory, like he was waiting to pounce on the first slip, the first sign of insecurity. I felt my pulse spike. My chest tightened. And yet, I didn't shrink. Mira caught my hand as we entered. "You look incredible," she whispered. Her eyes glowed with pride and reassurance. I squeezed her hand back, letting a fraction of my fear dissolve. As I moved through the crowd, I could hear whispers. "Is that? Wow, she looks different." I didn't know he could. Every sentence hit like a wave, some sharp, some gentle. My stomach churned. But with every comment, I realized something. I was seen. Not for the person everyone expected. Not for the mask I'd worn for years. But for me. Soft, delicate, expressive, alive. Ray cornered me near the snack table. "Interesting choice for tonight," he said, voice low, almost mocking. I met his gaze, steadying myself. "It's who I am." He laughed. Not a chuckle, a sharp bark. "Who you are. Or who you want to be." Heat rushed to my face. Fear. Anger. Embarrassment. But underneath it all, a quiet, steady flame of defiance ignited. "I'm done hiding," I said softly but firmly. "I'm done pretending to be someone else just to make others comfortable." His eyes narrowed, scanning my face for weakness. There was none. The office had gone silent. People were watching. Some shocked, some curious, some supportive. Even a few smiles from people I'd never spoken to before. It wasn't cheering. Not yet. But it was acknowledgement. I felt my spine straighten, shoulders back. Every ounce of fear still lingering in my body was being replaced by clarity, by pride, by the knowledge that hiding was no longer an option. Mira stepped closer, placing her hand lightly on my arm. "Hey," she said quietly. "You're amazing. Don't let him get to you." I glanced at her. The warmth in her eyes steadied me. I realized something vital. I didn't need everyone's approval. I didn't need Ray's. I didn't need the whispers or judgments. I just needed me. And Myra's support was enough. Ray leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You think everyone's going to accept this?" I tilted my chin, meeting his gaze. "You don't need to accept it. But I don't care if you do." The words felt like fire leaving my lips, burning away doubt and hesitation. A hush fell over the room. People shifted, whispers died down, and I realized I had taken control. By the end of the evening, something extraordinary happened. Colleagues I barely knew approached me. A few complimented my outfit. Some laughed softly, nervously, but warmly. And Mira? She never let go of my hand. I realized the power of authenticity, of stepping into the world fully, as myself. The world might not always approve. It might not always be kind. But living honestly gave me a strength I had never known. Walking home later that night, I replayed every moment. Ray's challenge, the whispers, the supportive smiles, the tension, fear, and triumph mingled inside me like a storm settling into calm. I understood something fundamental. Fear will always exist. Judgment will always exist. But hiding, pretending, conforming, that would always be worse. Every glance, every step, every small confrontation was teaching me a truth. I am stronger when I am authentic. By the time I reached my apartment, my heart was still racing. I removed my skirt and blouse carefully, placing them neatly in the closet. But unlike before, there was no shame. I looked in the mirror. The reflection was tired, but triumphant. Soft, expressive, alive, confident. I whispered. I did it. I stood. I didn't hide. And deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. The confrontation had not broken me. It had forged me stronger, braver, unapologetically myself. The weekend after the office party felt different. Not because anything had changed outwardly, my job, my colleagues, the streets, but because I had changed. Walking down the familiar streets, I noticed details I hadn't before. The sunlight glinting off car hoods, the gentle sway of trees in the breeze, the rhythm of my own steps. Everything felt sharper, more vivid, as if the world had expanded, welcoming me instead of trying to contain me. The reflection in shop windows confirmed it. Soft, confident, expressive. Every gesture, every glance, every curve I had come to embrace was visible. And for the first time, I walked without the weight of hiding. I realized that empowerment wasn't just about others seeing me, it was about me seeing me. Every morning, I dressed not for anyone else's approval, but for myself. Cream blouses, flowing skirts, thigh highs, delicate chokers, pastel sweaters, I didn't need to hide. I moved differently, spoke differently, laughed differently. I wasn't trying to impress. I wasn't trying to perform.
I was simply being.
The first time I laughed at work without worrying about raised judgment or whispered comments, I felt light.
Free.
I noticed colleagues smiling at me differently, some curious, some surprised, some quietly supportive. And instead of fear, I felt strength. I had chosen authenticity over conformity. Every day brought small victories. The barista at my favorite cafe now greeted me with a bright smile. The jogger at the park waved as I passed. Even Ray's smirk had softened, replaced by a reluctant acknowledgement of my confidence. I realized that empowerment isn't always about dramatic confrontations. Sometimes it's in the subtle, quiet victories, the nods, the smiles, the small gestures of recognition. I took those moments in, letting them remind me that living openly was not only possible but exhilarating. Mira remained my anchor. She listened without judgment, celebrated my growth, and reminded me that I didn't need everyone's approval to be valid. With her encouragement, I began connecting with others in the community, people who express themselves freely, unapologetically, beautifully. The first online support group I joined was intimidating at first, but I quickly realized I wasn't alone. Stories mirrored mine. Fear, doubt, judgment, and ultimate courage. Every conversation reminded me that empowerment wasn't just personal, it was collective. By embracing my identity, I could inspire others to embrace theirs. Fear no longer paralyzed me. It became a compass, a signal that I was pushing boundaries and growing. When someone stared, I didn't flinch. When someone whispered, I didn't shrink. When someone doubted, I didn't falter. Every challenge was a chance to reinforce my strength. Every discomfort was a reminder that authenticity often requires courage. And every step I took in soft shoes, flowing skirts, and pastel sweaters reminded me that the world could see me, and I was unashamed. I began exploring new avenues in life I had previously avoided. I joined social events, met new people, attended art exhibits, and even participated in local community projects. Every interaction carried a subtle undercurrent of empowerment, walking confidently, speaking freely, laughing openly. The person I had once hidden was no longer a secret. I wasn't performing. I wasn't pretending. I was influencing the world simply by existing fully, unapologetically. The next Monday, I encountered Ray in the break room. He raised an eyebrow, then smirked. But this time, I didn't hesitate. I met his gaze, soft but firm, confident but gentle. "Morning," I said with a smile that was mine. No fear, no hesitation. He shrugged and walked away. And I realized something profound. I didn't need his approval. I didn't need to prove myself to anyone who couldn't see my value. Empowerment wasn't about forcing acceptance. It was about knowing your worth even when others don't. Sitting alone that evening, reflecting on the week, I realized the transformation wasn't just external. It was internal. The fear, shame, and hesitation that had plagued me for years had been replaced with confidence, pride, and authenticity. I could finally see myself as complete, vibrant, and worthy. And I understood something essential. Empowerment isn't granted. It's claimed. I had claimed mine. By the end of the week, I was no longer experimenting or testing. I had integrated my identity into daily life seamlessly. The reflection in the mirror, once shocking and unfamiliar, now felt natural, comfortable, alive. I dressed for myself, laughed for myself, moved for myself. And the world adapted. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough to let me thrive. Every step I took, every gesture I made, every choice to exist authentically reinforced one undeniable truth. I am more than fear. I am more than judgment. I am me, fully, unapologetically, and powerfully. The quiet of my apartment never felt so alive. Sunlight streamed through the windows, catching the choker's silver heart on my neck, reflecting tiny sparks across the walls. It had been weeks since I first experimented in secret. Weeks since I walked into the office party fully myself, defying fear and judgment. Weeks since I realized the truth I had been avoiding for so long. I sank onto the couch, still dressed in the soft pastel sweater and thigh-highs, legs curled beneath me, and stared at my reflection in the coffee table glass. The person staring back was familiar, yet unrecognizable in the best way. Strong, vulnerable,
Soft.
unapologetic. I had crossed a line once thought impossible. And I hadn't fallen. I had flown. Looking back, the journey wasn't easy. Every small step, every experiment with clothing, makeup, and posture had been a challenge to my own fears. Every glance, every whisper, every judgmental stare in public had been a test. But with every step, I discovered something remarkable. Authenticity is its own reward. I remember the first night I touched the sweater, slid on the socks, applied the faintest lip tint, and fastened the choker. The trembling, the thrill, the fear. And how, in that moment, I felt alive for the first time in years. That night had been a spark. And now, weeks later, it had grown into a flame that refused to be hidden. Empowerment wasn't always dramatic. It wasn't always about confrontations or declarations. Sometimes it was the small, quiet victories. Walking down the street, noticing people smiling instead of judging. Receiving a compliment at the cafe without feeling self-conscious. Laughing freely with Mira without worrying about what anyone else thought. Recognizing the reflection in the mirror and feeling pride, not shame. These moments, fleeting as they were, accumulated into something larger than I could have imagined. They formed a foundation of strength that could withstand fear, judgment, or misunderstanding. Being a femboy had started as a dare, an experiment, a curiosity. But it had become something much deeper, a journey into understanding myself. I had learned that gender is not a box to fit into. It is a spectrum, a canvas, a fluid expression of who we are. Softness does not mean weakness. Vulnerability does not mean failure. Expression does not mean shame. I had learned to embrace contradiction, to balance strength and tenderness, to move through the world fully and freely without apology. Mira remained my constant anchor throughout this journey. Her unwavering support reminded me that authenticity thrives when nurtured, not judged. Through her encouragement, I connected with others who celebrated individuality, expression, and courage. Together, we shared experiences, stories, and laughter. Together, we created a space where differences were honored rather than hidden. I realized then that empowerment is not just personal, it is communal. By embracing myself, I had inspired others to embrace themselves. By showing courage, I had given permission for others to explore their own identities. Every choice I made, every outfit, every gesture, every smile carried weight. I wasn't just existing. I was demonstrating possibility. I had become living proof that fear could be transformed into courage. Judgment could be transformed into acceptance. Curiosity could be transformed into discovery. The world may not always understand me. Some may scoff. Some may stare. Some may question. But my existence, soft and expressive, bright and alive, would continue to ripple outward, slowly changing perceptions. Even small waves have power. Even subtle courage inspires transformation. I had learned lessons I would carry forever. Softness is not a flaw. Expression is not a crime. Courage does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers in the mirror before the first public step. Authenticity is worth discomfort. Empowerment is claiming your space, even when others doubt it. And most importantly, I had learned to love myself fully. Not the version everyone expected. Not the version society approved. The true, soft, expressive, radiant me. If you are watching this, wondering if you can exist fully, wondering if you can embrace the parts of yourself that society tells you to hide, remember this.
You can.
You have the strength inside you already. Every step into authenticity is a victory. Every small expression of your truth ripples outward. Every time you smile as your true self, you inspire someone else to do the same. The world may not always understand, but it doesn't need to. You only need to understand yourself and honor it. I rose from the couch, brushing imaginary dust from the skirt. The choker's silver heart glimmered in the sunlight. I walked to the window, feeling the warmth on my face, the breeze through my hair. And I whispered to myself, I am soft. I am strong. I am me. And I will continue to be me, fully, unapologetically, powerfully. For the first time, I realized the journey wasn't about testing boundaries or proving anything to anyone else. It was about living freely, authentically, and courageously. And that freedom was worth everything. Monday morning felt different than any other Monday before. I stepped into the sunlight streaming through my apartment window, adjusting the soft pastel sweater I had chosen, smoothing the skirt over my thighs, and fastening the tiny choker that had become my talisman. This wasn't an outfit. It was armor, not to fight others, but to protect the version of myself I had finally allowed to exist freely. I caught my reflection in the mirror and smiled, a soft, knowing smile. The reflection wasn't just alive. It was thriving. And I realized something vital. Living authentically wasn't a moment, it was a process. Every morning, I dedicated time to myself, carefully choosing outfits, experimenting with makeup, practicing gestures and expressions that made me feel whole. The process was meditative. Blush brushed across cheekbones, soft eyeliner tracing my eyes, lips tinted gently. Every movement precise, intimate, a dialogue with my reflection.
It wasn't vanity.
It was discovery, exploration, connection. And I noticed something new. Each ritual made me stronger. Confidence wasn't instantaneous. It was layered, built slowly through repeated affirmation. The streets were alive with movement and noise. Yet for the first time, I felt grounded, rooted in myself. People glanced, some whispered, some smiled. A child waved at me from a stroller, and I waved back instinctively. The simple interaction carried profound weight, connection through acknowledgement. I realized that empowerment wasn't about grand gestures. It was about showing up fully. Soft, expressive, unapologetic. Every small step through the streets reinforced my existence. Every breath I took was a claim, I am here.
I am me.
At the office, the transformation was noticeable. Not in my competence, I had always been capable, but in my presence. I walked past colleagues with a grace that drew attention without seeking it. Meetings felt different. I spoke clearly, calmly, with a newfound authority wrapped in softness. Ray, surprisingly, kept a neutral expression, perhaps realizing that attempts to intimidate me were futile. And for the first time, I noticed how subtle changes in presence could shift perception. Confidence didn't have to be loud. Softness didn't have to be weak. Expression didn't need permissio. It simply needed to exist. Lunchtime brought the opportunity to practice social interaction beyond the office. At a nearby cafe, I ordered coffee, noticing how my gestures, posture, and voice were now fluid and natural. The barista complimented the outfit, a gentle, encouraging remark, and I realized validation wasn't the goal, but acknowledgement mattered. Later, in the park, I joined a small group practicing yoga. At first, I hesitated, unsure if my presence would be judged. But I reminded myself of the lessons I had learned. Authenticity is a choice, and discomfort is part of growth. The gentle movements, the warm sunlight, the shared smiles, all reinforced a subtle but powerful truth. Being myself allowed me to connect with the world in ways I hadn't imagined. I began curating a wardrobe that reflected more than trends. It reflected identity. Soft fabrics, flowing lines, pastel shades, delicate accessories. Each piece was a tool of self-expression. Each choice communicated courage, softness, and authenticity without words. Experimentation became an art form. Mixing textures, colors, and styles wasn't superficial. It was a form of storytelling. Every outfit, every accessory, every subtle gesture told the story of who I was becoming. Of course, not every encounter was easy. A neighbor once made a comment, "I didn't know he liked dressing like that." My pulse spiked, but I didn't shrink. Instead, I smiled softly. It's who I am. The tension lingered, but it was fleeting. Because I knew the truth. Judgment does not define worth. Empowerment is claiming space even when the world questions it. And with each small confrontation, my confidence grew stronger. Evenings became times of reflection. Sitting in my apartment, journal in hand, I noted every small victory. The smile from the barista, the subtle nod from a colleague, the feeling of sunlight on soft skin during a walk. Every moment, no matter how ordinary, reinforced a fundamental truth. I am valid. I am expressive. I am enough. With confidence growing, I began mentoring others quietly. A friend struggling with self-expression asked for advice. I shared my journey, the fear, the experimentation, the small victories, the empowerment. And I saw hope spark in their eyes, a reflection of my own first steps. It was humbling and thrilling to realize that embracing myself fully allowed me to inspire others. The ripple effect of authenticity was real, and I was part of it. By the end of the week, I felt the culmination of the journey so far. Softness, expression, courage, and identity had been integrated into daily life seamlessly. I moved through the world confidently, fluidly, authentically. And I realized empowerment isn't a destination, it's a lifestyle. Every step, every gesture, every outfit, every smile was a statement. I am me. Fully. Unapologetically. And that knowledge, quiet, persistent, radiant, was the truest form of liberation. The invitation arrived on a soft, sunlit morning. A local charity gala, formal, public, bustling with influential faces from across the city. At first glance, it was intimidating. A sea of polished suits, high heels, glittering jewelry, and whispered networks. And at the center of it, I would be stepping in fully, no hiding, no half measures. I stared at the envelope, heart racing. The gala wasn't just a social event, it was a test. A test of confidence, authenticity, and courage. Could I stand as myself among dozens of strangers, where every gaze felt magnified, every whisper amplified? I took a deep breath.
Yes.
I could. The morning became sacred, a slow unfolding of self-expression. I chose a flowing silk dress, soft lilac that matched the blush of my cheeks. The choker was replaced by a delicate necklace, subtle but symbolic. Shoes clicked softly against the floor as I practiced walking, feeling every curve, every step, every sway. Makeup was precise, eyes lined, lips tinted, skin glowing softly under the sunlight. Every detail mattered, not to impress, but to affirm. I was entering the world fully, not as a guest, but as a declaration. The gala hall sparkled like a jewel box. Crystal chandeliers, polished floors, the murmur of elegant conversations. I felt the weight of gazes the moment I walked in. Some surprised, some curious, some openly admiring. A wave of fear struck briefly, but I steadied myself. I was here. I belonged. Not as a novelty, not as a joke, but as me. The soft shuffle of my heels echoed confidently as I moved through the crowd, acknowledging smiles, nods, and polite greetings. Midway through the evening, a woman approached me. "Excuse me," she said warmly, eyes sparkling. "I couldn't help but notice your style. It's incredible. The confidence, the elegance, that's inspiring." My pulse spiked. This wasn't teasing. This wasn't judgment. This was admiration. The words felt like sunlight breaking through clouds, illuminating every shadow of doubt I'd carried. I smiled, cheeks flushed. "Thank you. That means a lot." She nodded, and I realized something fundamental. People respond to authenticity. They recognize courage when it's genuine. As the evening unfolded, I found myself in small groups of conversation. Laughter bubbled naturally. Eyes met mine, curious but warm. No one mocked, no one questioned. I spoke confidently about my work, my interests, even the subtle details of my personal style journey. And each time, I noticed something extraordinary. People listened. Truly listened. A man in a crisp suit said, "You carry yourself with such ease, it's rare to see that kind of confidence." I chuckled softly, but inside, I felt a quiet, profound triumph. Every interaction was a small affirmation. Authenticity commands respect. Mira was there, of course, glowing with pride. "See," she whispered. "You belong. You shine." Her words warmed me. They reminded me that support is an amplifier, magnifying courage into action. And with her beside me, I felt invincible, a soft but undeniable force in the room. We danced lightly around small talk, navigating introductions and pleasantries. Every step, every laugh, every soft gesture felt like a statement. I exist, fully, unapologetically. Later, the gala included a brief presentation honoring contributors. By chance or fate, I was invited to the stage to hand over an award. Heels clicking, heart hammering, I walked confidently toward the microphone. Every pair of eyes felt like a spotlight, every murmur a drumbeat of scrutiny. Yet as I raised the award, smiled, and spoke softly but firmly, something extraordinary happened. Applause. Genuine, warm, appreciative applause. The sensation was electric. I had stepped fully into the public eye and been accepted. Not for novelty, not for shock, but for the authenticity, courage, and poise I carried. Standing there, feeling the applause, I realized how far I had come. From the trembling uncertainty of private experiments, to hesitant public outings, to office challenges, to now, a gala spotlight, I had grown, stretched, and claimed my identity fully. The soft, expressive me had become visible, recognized, valued. And in that recognition, I felt a profound sense of empowerment. I had discovered something vital. Acceptance often begins with oneself, but courage invites the world to see you as you truly are. Walking home that night, the city lights danced like tiny constellations. Every passerby, every distant sound, felt different, softer, warmer, alive. I realized the gala was not just an event. It was a culmination of a journey, a testament to courage and authenticity. The reflection in my apartment window smiled back at me. Not hesitant.
Not shy.
Not uncertain. But radiant.
Soft.
Empowered. Fully alive. I had stepped into the spotlight and survived. I had faced judgment, curiosity, admiration, and acceptance. And in every step, every glance, every word, I had claimed something more important than applause or recognition. I had claimed myself. The journey wasn't over. Life would continue to test, challenge, and surprise me. But tonight I knew this. Being soft, expressive, and authentic wasn't a limitation. It was my greatest strength. And no gala, no office, no street corner could ever take that away. The city was quieter than usual that Sunday morning, the streets bathed in the soft glow of dawn. I sat by my apartment window, sipping tea, letting the warmth seep into my hands, my chest, my whole being. The reflection in the glass wasn't just of me. It was of the journey I had walked, the battles I had faced, and the courage I had finally embraced. It was strange, surreal even. how a simple choice to express myself had cascaded into an entirely new reality. I remembered the first trembling moments, the first hesitant experiments with skirts and chokers, the whispered doubts in the mirror. Now, each morning felt like a declaration. I was here, soft, expressive, unapologetically alive. I traced the timeline in my mind. The early fears, the embarrassment, the anxious glances, the whispers in the office had been intense, almost suffocating. I had questioned everything. Was I being selfish? Was I ridiculous? Was I imagining the possibility of acceptance? But every small victory, Myra's unwavering support, the timid compliments from strangers, my own growing confidence, had stacked together like bricks, building a foundation that could withstand judgment. The layers of fear had peeled away, revealing clarity. Authenticity wasn't frightening. It was liberating. And now I realized empowerment wasn't just about surviving scrutiny. It was about helping others see they could survive it too. I had always been hesitant to speak openly about my journey. Fear of judgment lingered like a shadow in quiet corners of my mind. But over the past weeks, I had discovered a truth I could no longer ignore. Sharing my experiences might give someone else courage they didn't know they had. A friend had messaged me a few days ago, quietly struggling with self-expression, hesitant to experiment with clothing and makeup. I hesitated at first. What could I say that would truly help? Then I remembered the moments that had mattered most. The validation, the gentle encouragement, the simple acknowledgement that I was allowed to exist fully. So I wrote back, carefully, sincerely, detailing my own steps, the experimentation, the mistakes, the triumphs, the emotions. I didn't just give advice. I shared my heart, my vulnerability, my courage. And when they replied, their words carried something powerful: relief, hope, and excitement. They were ready to try, to step into themselves because I had done it first. Mentorship wasn't a title, a role, or a responsibility. It was a ripple. Each time I shared a story, each time I offered guidance or a kind word, I realized I was creating waves that reached farther than I could see. The ripple effect of authenticity was beautiful, subtle, and profound. I remembered the first time a colleague complimented my confidence, and how that simple recognition had ignited a spark inside me. Now I was returning that spark to someone else. And in that moment, I understood something vital. Courage multiplies when it's shared. By mid-morning, I had scheduled a casual meetup with a few people from the community I had connected with online. Each person carried a story of hesitation, fear, societal pressure, and the desire to express themselves fully. As I listened to them, I realized that everyone's journey was unique, but the emotions were universal: anxiety, excitement, self-doubt, and the thrill of discovery. I shared my own experiences, not as a blueprint, but as a testament. Experimentation is allowed, vulnerability is powerful, and every step counts. The room hummed with energy, empathy, and inspiration. And when someone hesitated, unsure of how to take the next step, I simply smiled and said, "Start where you are. Be patient. Celebrate the smallest victories. You're allowed to exist fully, softly, bravely." The words felt natural. They weren't rehearsed. They were truth. Later that afternoon, alone in my apartment, I let myself sink into reflection. The person I had been, a shy, fearful individual constrained by societal expectations, felt like a distant memory. Each experiment, each confrontation, each small victory had transformed me into someone wholly different, soft yet strong, expressive yet grounded, vulnerable yet powerful. I realized that empowerment wasn't something external. It wasn't applause or approval, or even acceptance from strangers. It was internal. It was claiming your space, claiming your identity, claiming your right to exist without compromise. And now, as I helped others claim their space, I understood a deeper layer. True transformation is never just personal. It resonates outward, touching lives, shaping communities, and building a culture of acceptance and courage. I decided to document my journey, carefully crafting each word to convey emotion, vulnerability, and authenticity. Not as a performance, but as a mirror for those struggling to find themselves. Every detail mattered. The trembling first steps, the whispered doubts, the exhilaration of small victories, the moments of unexpected recognition. Each story had the power to inspire someone, somewhere, to embrace their identity fully. And in sharing my narrative, I discovered yet another form of empowerment. Words can be as transformative as actions. I didn't know exactly what the future would hold. There would be challenges. There would be judgment. There would be moments of doubt and hesitation. But I also knew this. I had discovered a resilience I hadn't known existed. I had cultivated courage that would not easily fade. I had embraced authenticity, and it had opened doors, not just for me, but for others. Mentorship, guidance, storytelling, connection. These were new avenues, paths I had never imagined. And now, they were mine to explore, nurture, and expand. As the sun dipped behind the skyline, painting the city in soft amber, I sat by my window, hands clasped around a warm cup, thoughts wandering. I had started this journey as a whisper in the mirror, unsure, fearful, curious. I had walked through judgment, curiosity, confrontation, and acceptance. I had stepped into public spaces fully and been recognized, not just for appearance, but for authenticity. And now, I had the ability to touch lives, inspire courage, and mentor others. The journey had transformed me from a timid explorer of identity into a beacon of empowerment. I whispered softly to the reflection in the glass. You are enough. Your courage matters. Your softness is strength. Your journey is powerful. And your story is just beginning. The first rays of sunlight crept through my window, spilling gold across the room. I sat quietly, notebook open, pen in hand, reflecting on the journey that had transformed not just my outward expression, but the very core of who I was. From timid curiosity to private experimentation, to public recognition, to mentorship and influence, the journey had been monumental. And yet, in the quiet morning, I realized it was only the beginning. Life hadn't just changed. I had changed. And with that change came a responsibility I hadn't anticipated, to leave a legacy of courage, authenticity, and empowerment for anyone who might one day walk a similar path. Looking in the mirror, I didn't see a reflection that needed approval. I saw someone soft yet resilient, expressive yet grounded, radiant yet human. Every choice I had made, every outfit, every gesture, every confrontation, every small victory had culminated in this simple truth. I am enough. I am me. Fully, unapologetically, and powerfully. It was no longer about proving anything to the world. It was about living fully, sharing courage, and inspiring authenticity. Over time, my circle of support expanded. People who had once been strangers became friends, allies, mentors, and collaborators. I found myself attending events, workshops, and gatherings where self-expression and courage were celebrated. And in every interaction, I saw the ripple effect of my own transformation mirrored back: confidence, validation, and inspiration. A shy teenager approached me at a community workshop one day, eyes wide. Are you really living like this?" they asked hesitantly. I smiled warmly.
Yes.
And you can too. The hope in their eyes was tangible. I realized that empowerment was not just personal, it was generational, communal, and transformative. I began to understand something profound. Visibility matters. Every time I walked confidently down the street, smiled freely, shared my story, or offered mentorship, I became part of a larger movement. Not a movement of protest, but of example, living proof that fear can be transformed into courage and authenticity can flourish even in the face of judgment. I realized that my journey had become a beacon. Every soft glance, every delicate gesture, every expression of self-love was a statement. You are allowed to exist fully, and so am I. Through workshops, online platforms, and casual conversations, I began mentoring others more intentionally. I shared my story not as a blueprint, but as a testament to the possibility of growth, courage, and self-acceptance. The first time someone told me, "Because of you, I finally wore what I wanted to school," I felt an indescribable warmth. It was a reminder that our choices, however small they may seem, can inspire change in others. Empowerment multiplies, creating a ripple effect that spreads farther than we can ever predict. I realized life itself was a canvas. Every outfit, every movement, every gesture could be a brushstroke of self-expression. Gone were the days of hesitation, judgment, or hiding. Even the mundane moments, coffee runs, office meetings, walks in the park, became opportunities to celebrate authenticity. I felt a thrill in small victories, a compliment at work, a friendly smile from a stranger, a nod of recognition from someone who might have once doubted me. Every affirmation was a reminder: courage is contagious, and authenticity is magnetic. Of course, challenges remained. There were moments when fear whispered, moments when judgment lingered, moments when the weight of societal expectation pressed down. But now, those whispers were met with resilience. Those judgments were met with understanding. And those societal pressures were met with grace. I had learned that empowerment isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to act despite it. Every time I chose authenticity over concealment, courage over hesitation, I strengthened not only myself, but the network of people inspired by my example. Sitting with my reflection that morning, I thought about how far I had come. From secret experimentation to full public recognition, from self-doubt to mentorship, from fear to empowerment, I had evolved. But the most profound transformation was invisible. It was internal, enduring, and unshakable. I had learned to embrace contradiction, softness as strength, vulnerability as courage, expression as liberation. I had learned to claim my space unapologetically. I had learned that the legacy of authenticity is not measured in fame or applause, but in the courage it sparks in others. If you are watching this, uncertain, fearful, or hesitant, I want you to hear this. Your authenticity matters. Your courage matters. Your expression matters. Even if the world doesn't understand, even if judgment surrounds you, even if fear whispers, you are allowed to exist fully, softly, bravely. Every small step, every gesture, every choice matters. By embracing yourself, you invite the world to embrace you too. And in doing so, you create a ripple, a legacy, a story that can inspire countless others. The sun climbed higher, bathing the city in warmth. I stepped to the window, feeling the breeze against my skin, the sunlight illuminating the choker that had become a symbol of my journey. I whispered softly to myself, I am soft. I am strong. I am expressive. I am courageous. I will live fully, inspire others, and leave a legacy of authenticity. This is my journey, my story, my life, and it is only beginning. The reflection smiled back, radiant, unashamed, unstoppable. I turned away from the window, ready to step into the day, into life, into possibility, fully me.